probably a little bit of ego too. It takes a lot to tell yourself.
Now we're talking. That's what I wanted to get to. There you go.
Yeah. If things are going well, it's so difficult to look yourself in the mirror. It's like, how can you do better? Mm-hmm. What areas can you make yourself uncomfortable so it's no longer uncomfortable?
I am Dr. Don Wilkins, and I am the author of Barriers to Breakthrough, and we're back with another episode of Barriers to Breakthrough. This is the speaker series where we are having a discussion about all things leadership. And today we have a treat for you, a really good episode planned out for you. We have Marcus Tompkins. He is a business development manager, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. First of all, thank you for coming.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I want to jump in by kind of letting the folks know who you are and kind of how you got into leadership. So one of the first questions that I'd like to ask our guests is basically when was the first time that you recognized that you were a leader? So before you ask that, just give the folks a bit of a rundown of kind of like your leadership role now and kind of how you got into leadership.
So my current leadership role is a business development manager for an executive recruiting firm. I kind of stumbled upon it. I had a history in tech sales, and then kind of transitioned into more leadership position within, corporate sales. I'd say it's started, or when it kind of clicked that I wanted to be a leader or felt that I would be good at it, but it was within. I was general manager of a gourmet burger restaurant in Orlando, Florida. So I just had gotten out of school, kind of figuring out what I wanted to do, and worked as a line cook and kind of worked my way up as a sous chef while I was in school. And so got out and took on a general manager position that was probably not exactly qualified for, but it was a great learning experience, and it allowed me to really understand what it takes to develop your staff and to understand what the different intricacies that come with understanding everyone from the back of the house to the front of the house, what their needs are, kind of supporting that as well. So that was I was kind of thrown in the fire, but that was my first opportunity.
Thrown in the fire. I think that's how most leaders get started, right? They just get thrown in the fire. I want to take it back. I believe that like leadership is this like lifelong journey, and I try to get us to like kind of go back to the beginning. When was the first time you recognized that you were a leader? Whether it was in childhood or adolescent years, maybe high school, I don't know when, but when was the first time that you recognized that you were a leader?
Ironically enough, I think it started when I transitioned from team sports to individual sport. When it comes to leading myself, because that was kind of a big jump. And I think the reason I left team sports was because of lack of leadership and feeling that either I didn't have a voice that was being heard or felt that I didn't have enough control over my destination. So that was probably the instance I went from team sports, basketball, soccer, and then transitioned to, competitive tennis. And for me, it was really difficult because at that point you're leading yourself. Everything falls on you. Your wins, your losses, it's on you. Transitioning, that to kind of my career, and then through volunteering and having people want me to lead or want my advice. When I started having a younger generation that I was managing started asking me for advice, and they were liking it, and it was successful for them. It was kind of a pathway that I naturally fell into, but at the same time, I want to be a resource for people. I've always felt that. I like to help people. So that'd probably be my biggest leadership contributor personality trait, is the fact that I want to help. I want to have an effect on someone and have my advice or have whatever I say, trigger something within them to make them want to make that change or make a better opportunity for themselves.
That's interesting that the transition or maybe the recognition of leadership came from an individual sport. I often say that like the first like ring of leadership is you leading yourself. Talk a little bit more about that, because I think that is telling around, what it takes to be an effective leader. You played sports where there was a team and probably captains and all types of people that were like coaches, obviously, that would lead the team. But you recognized that you were a leader once you started to do the individual sports where there weren't other folks that you had to lead. So talk a little bit more about that. I think that's really interesting.
It was tough from from a standpoint of my age and transitioning to individual sport. Accountability is number one. There is no one else that you can blame. If it's not the team sports doesn't hold everyone accountable. But I feel that individual sports, there's no running away from it.
It's really clear like who's accountable.
You're the only one. So if you didn't practice and you didn't make the changes necessary or at least seek out the advice or get the help, it was always on you. So if you needed more from someone, you had to be the first person within yourself to say, I need to change this or I need to get help to help change this. And that was probably the most difficult transition because, I think you have to be harder on yourself. Within team sports, obviously you have your teammates that will hold you accountable and your coach and so on. But at times, if they fail at doing that for you, they're doing a disservice to you because if you're looking to lean on that and you don't get it, I think certain hurdles are harder to get over. And then within, individual sport, their hurdles are always right in front of your face. And then anyone that you lean on to maybe give you advice is going to be able to really pick apart everything that you do or don't do. So within a team sport, certain things you can hide certain mistakes, you can hide certain shortcomings, but from a maturity standpoint, you have to be mature really quickly. There's if you don't do the things necessary to be successful, it's just so blatant and obvious. It gets to a point where you're delusional if you don't see and notice those things.
So you started to lead yourself first, and that showed you some of the either shortcomings in yourself and things that you needed to work on, but then also like the things that you did really well probably were illuminated early on too. I think that, when we talk about leadership, there's a huge component of like mentorship that I think either people are afforded or they're not. Talk about your first mentor. Who was that person that like kind of helped you to like hone in on your skill set of being a leader, or maybe just someone that you watched as maybe a young leader, or maybe just a young person that you watched and like, oh, okay, this is how you're supposed to be leading.
Sure. I probably say my first job in high school. So I used to string tennis rackets, and I was kind of assistant management of running a relatively small tennis shop. But, that was essentially one of my first leaders was my boss and a family friend. And, he taught me a lot, probably some things my mom didn't want him to teach me at such a young age, just about life and things of that nature. But he also had a high level of accountability. There was a certain standard that he wanted to keep, and, your name matters. That's something from a mentorship that I learned early on is, no matter what you do, if you're a CEO of a company, Fortune 500 company, or if you have your own small business, having pride in what you do and having a process you stick to, and then holding the people around you accountable for that process is imperative. And I felt that, I got the truth. There was no sugarcoating it, but didn't do something right, they're gonna let me know. And you got to put your feelings aside and realize this person's just trying to help you. They're just trying to expedite helping you by being raw and honest with you. When I was 15, 16, I think at first kind of hurt my feelings to some degree, just because I'm not used to it. In school, you think you get catered to a little bit more than you would as a job. Sure. At the same time, the job needed to be done. The clientele had high expectations. We had a name that we had to continue to represent. And so I had an appreciation for whatever that is. When you get dressed in the morning, you make your bread, how you present yourself. You're also always selling yourself. And I think part of leadership is having people believe in whatever your process is, whatever you're trying to sell to them, or whatever you're trying to lead with. They need to believe it from the second they look at you. If you're unkept, or if you don't have a process, or if you don't have an agenda that you're continuously sticking to, it makes people question kind of, okay, well, if you're not managing your own life very well, then how can you manage mine, or how can you assist me with that kind of advice?
Right, back to the leader, like leading yourself first, right?
Right.
So I've heard, a few times now you've mentioned accountability is like something that is important to you in terms of how you look at and roll out your leadership. I want to take everything that you talked about and try to lead up to like where you are now.
Okay.
This book, Barriers to Breakthrough, has these 13 strategies to kind of support the leadership in the multi-generational workplace. Mm-hmm. And I know that in your line of work, you deal with all different types of generations that may be on the same team together or maybe on a project that they're working on. What have you seen in that regards that all of the things you talked about accountability and being presenting something that a system can be built around and folks can corral around. What have you seen in that regards when it comes to your space of leadership?
You mean the kind of challenges with the multi-generational?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I'd say you have to kind of find a hybrid process that makes it work for everyone. I feel that understanding, what I feel like the old generation has, they very need to have a process to where they can be held accountable and hold the people they work with accountability again. But I will say the younger generation doesn't worry about as much about that and more wants to feel that they're heard, their voice is heard, mm-hmm. that they have value within their company or within their department or whatever that looks like. Mm-hmm. And I feel like the old generation doesn't worry as much about that, but they do want a pathway to success. If that's career growth, if that's a certain like financial gain, whatever that looks like, you need to all generations want to feel that the leadership path, either that you're trying to give to them for their individual goals, is something they can believe in and hold each other accountable and transparent on that. Just going back to, being in high school or middle school when you're on a group project, there's always that one or two people that do most of the work, or right. Or do work better than other. Right, exactly. I try not to be that person either. So, nobody wants to be that guy or gal. So I look at that the same that has transferred into the corporate world, and then now that there's a combination of hybrid and in office people that you're managing, there's a whole nother layer to it. Because the individuals you can see in office, you can see, what they're doing. You can hold them a little bit more accountable, in my opinion, than your hybrid or full remote staff. So really balancing out, making sure that everyone feels that their contribution is not only being heard, but that it is having an effect on the big picture. No one wants to just show up and get on the gerbil wheel and just work. It's just never going to be enough, especially when things get more difficult.
Yeah. You brought in this new caveat of like the hybrid work. New leaders that are out there now, I know that they have that same, challenge, being able to balance the work that's in front of me physically, but then also thinking about this other lens of like, hey, I got folks on the staff that maybe they work a couple days in office and then the rest of the work is outside of the office, hybrid. What have you seen that has been effective in trying to manage a staff where folks are in right in front of you doing a project, but they're also online and trying to get that same vision accomplished? Right.
I think you need to ask more questions when it comes to their individual role and experience. I think when you have in-office individuals, more likely to ask questions because they can just step 10 feet down the hallway and pop in, and you can have a lot of mini conversations that help the communication process, help the relationship building. When you have someone who's remote, or if it's a hybrid situation, when you need to speak with them, it's a Teams meeting or Zoom meeting. So you have to stop your process, create this call and this meeting, and it's just not as natural. So I think the layers that come with that need to be recognized. And so you almost need to put more attention to your hybrid or remote staff, because they don't have the opportunity to ask certain questions, or maybe they don't want to go through the process of stopping their process to Teams or set up a Zoom meeting. It's just different, and you have to respect that.
And I don't. So you're making me think of something, and this is not in regards to like generations, but what types of characteristics or idiosyncrasies, if you will, have you seen that works best for folks that like kind of want to work hybrid versus the people that are, in person?
Right. I think the hybrid or remote, you need to have an agenda, whatever that looks like. I think walking into or going into meetings, kind of not really sure exactly you might have an idea of what's going to be discussed, but really having a checklist. So everyone is held accountable to what they need to bring to the table, and that process, you don't get sidetracked. I think when you're in person, you can accomplish more organically because you're used to speaking with someone. They're right there. You can bring up different ideas on the fly. I feel that when it's a remote setup, you just want to make sure that you're aware of their experience, and their experience is it's always going to be different because you don't have a natural environment where you can ask different staff members, assistants on whatever project what you're working on. It's more unnatural, honestly. I think humans we're pack animals. We like to make sure to working with people and feel valued and feel that we're heard, and that's just so much more difficult when you're doing it remotely.
Leaders got to get that part right? Learning how to deal with different individuals in different ways. Maybe on the same project, same team, same agenda, same vision, but like 5 or 6 different folks from different generations, and what they value is maybe different. Talk to me about what your experience in having to learn different modes of communication or ways to incentivize work from different folks that are on the same team, but maybe from different generations. If you have a story.
Yeah. So most recently, actually, it's spoken with a staff member who because of her age and generation she came from, I made certain assumptions on how she likes to communicate. I assume just with the social media platforms that everyone is communicating on, that they don't mind segueing or sidetracking, work meetings to talk about their personal life or to discuss, what they're doing this week and things of that nature.
Build relationships.
Right. Okay. Exactly. And she didn't necessarily say this to me per se, but said there was other leadership to where that she wished they would stay more on track and stay on the agenda for the call, because they honestly, she put it bluntly, it's like, I really don't care what you did last weekend. And it's not from a personal level. It's just you have to respect and understand what relationship you have with certain people. You're going to have staff members who don't mind having this conversation, who want it, and they want to connect with you that way. And you have some people where it's like, hey, I want to meet with you, give you what you need. I get from you what I need. And then we can go back to doing what we're supposed to be doing, work-wise. And I think there's a touch of introvert that comes in there as well that I think is missed. And then certain people might come across as extrovert or bring that energy for their position because it's needed. For instance, I'm in sales, so I have to bring the energy. I know that I need to be the person that lifts the energy in the room, whoever I'm speaking with, if it's remotely or if it's in person. But it is exhausting. And so I make the assumption that because of her age, generation she falls in, and that the most of the people in that bracket love to over communicate, loves the social media platform, loves to be part of that world. That wasn't her. She was an introvert to some degree, but also wanted to set guidelines and parameters on her work relationships with staff members, which is her right. As much as we would love to come in the office and we're all best friends, we're all doing the things we need to do, making the money we want to make, it's just not realistic. And you have to be aware of that and be comfortable with not having that hurt your feelings. We don't need to be best friends for us to be successful together, but we need to have a certain level of respect and listen to one another. So I make sure to remind myself of that.
I can only imagine the amount of leaders that have a staff and kind of get that wrong. I know I have too. And thank you for sharing that. I'm assuming that this particular staff member identifies with, not even so identifies, falls under this generation. Maybe it was a millennial or Gen Z, right?
Yeah.
But what I'm hearing from you is that her generation that she really resonates with and probably operates from is not Gen Z.
Right.
And you have to know that as a leader, right? Like, I think that's really important for leaders to do, because you'll be banging your head up against the wall trying to, roll with the assumptions that you have made about certain generations. And that's what I wanted to really hit on in this book. Again, this book isn't about maybe stereotyping folks and putting them in different characteristics because of a different generation. It's really about learning about the different generations and trying to figure out which staff member resonates with different generations so that you can serve them better. So that's pretty, guys. I do know that that's a thing. I've heard that, as I talk with more leaders, they're like, yeah, I just got that thing totally wrong.
Yeah.
What advice would you give the younger Marcus that is navigating, developing staff, managing business, and all of those things? What advice would you give to the younger Marcus from the things that you know now, in your space that you're working in now?
Mm-hmm. I'd probably tell him to study his craft more. Like anything in life, you need to always have continuous education. So something I didn't do when I was younger and started managing, leading more, and owning businesses was listening to others that have doing it better in different ways that they are successful. And not all leadership books and management books are created equally, or our process is going to work for you. But you need to understand what options are available, and you need to also be aware of how much the job and market and people's career growth and career process is changing. How it changes them emotionally. How I think ever since COVID, since 2020, it's different. There's a lot of little intricacies that's changed how you lead, how you manage people. I just didn't pay attention to as much. For me, it was almost, well, I'm successful, things are going well. If it ain't broke, don't fix it type of mentality to some degree. Or I'm just so overwhelmed that I'm happy things are going well. I don't need to change anything. I think it has a lot to do as well, because I think in leadership, you have to admit to where even though you are overwhelmed, you still need to have continuous understanding that it doesn't stop. You need to be reading and leaning on others, mentors, and communicating to get that repertoire of knowledge that can help you solve problems that you might not have today, but you might have tomorrow. So, yeah.
What do you think prevented you from doing that in your earlier years, getting all that information that you said that you would give to
laziness to some degree. Just I'll be honest, because it wasn't a lack of resources.
Okay,
I have a lot of resources. My father was very successful in his arena, so I was always around a lot of type A, high performing individuals. So there wasn't a lack of resources. It was probably a little bit of ego too. It takes a lot to tell yourself.
Now we're talking. That's what I wanted to get to. There you go.
Yeah. If things are going well, it's so difficult to look yourself in the mirror. It's like, how can you do better? Mm-hmm. What areas can you make yourself uncomfortable so it's no longer uncomfortable? So and caring more too. A lot of my career started off with just managing. Okay, I just noticed that I like to be in a place to some degree have more control. And I felt that.
What were you managing? If you are saying that it is, caring more, would have been something that you probably would have shifted,
right?
And you're talking about managing. It doesn't sound to me that you were managing the folks that were in front of you. Sounds like it would be something else that you were trying to manage. Was it maybe the end product, the results, efficiencies? Mm-hmm. What do you think you were managing there?
It's kind of a loaded question because, in the end, as much as I can say I like helping people and I want to help people be happier in their individual career or roles and whatever, relationship I have with them. But in the end, also, there's a bigger picture. There's a goal in mind. Well, I have expectations, there's measurables that I have to meet. Yeah. And as much as I care about, said individual on being a great leader and helping them, in the end, if you can't get the job done, I'm going to find someone that will. And that's a really hard balance because especially if you have a really, close relationship with someone, which is somewhat a detriment to some degree. You want to get close, but not too close because it starts affecting the decision you have to make for the betterment of the business or the betterment of your own goals. What was your original segue? You just wanted me to.
No, don't. I think it's important that we kind of take a deeper look into our own practices. I think, the folks that will be watching this episode and they probably already got their wheels turning is just thinking about if I am so hyper focused on results and getting the measurables done, then I might miss the whole point of leadership, which is to kind of develop other leaders. Yeah, we definitely want to make sure that we stay vision focused. But as I'm hearing the younger, and I obviously you've evolved since then, but as I'm hearing the younger Marcus is more about, results and the end product and making sure that was the focal point. But as I'm hearing you talk about I kind of wanted to think about people more.
Right.
So I was curious about your thoughts on that, just because I heard managing results versus like managing people, and that's really what we're doing when we're trying to be a leader, right? We're trying to coach and then manage those people as well.
Yeah, and another piece I'd like to add is leadership. You have to have an actual interest in that individual's growth, and you have to have some sort of measurements that you at least hold yourself accountable for. You don't necessarily need to share that with them, but you should feel that, said person has brought these concerns with, if it comes to advice they need on their career, their personal life, or whatever that looks like. You should want to carry to the point where you see results that are helping them. But then again, people obviously are human. And so listening and taking that advice and putting into action and process is on them as well. But you also have to be able to help them through that process. It's not enough to say, okay, go do X, Y, Z, and this will be the result as long as you do it how I told you. Mm-hmm. That's not enough. Mm-hmm. People are going to get sidetracked. They're going to take missteps. You need to make sure that you can have measurables that you are seeing results from them, because that's ultimately what's going to make them happier.
People feel good when they're successful, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What grinds your gears now? What's the thing? I'm starting to develop this idea of building this community of leaders so that we can kind of have a space to like talk about the perils of leadership and the successes as well. Because everyone puts on the social media the awards and things that they win,
right? Accolades.
But the conversation around the things that that are grinding my gears in terms of leadership, that doesn't get enough space and enough space to like kind of talk about. So what's that for you now? What's that for you in terms of leadership?
I find myself frustrated with people not being honest with themselves when it comes to what they need to be happy, and what are you doing to take those steps. I can only help someone so much. I think a lot of people get complacent with their life or their career path, and they don't want to be honest with the changes that need to be made to make it better. I hear a lot of people with a stuck mentality, and that's from a human perspective, that's an awful feeling. Like you literally feel stuck. You don't have options. You don't want to take. You're risk adverse, so you don't want to take the necessary steps to maybe better your life or better your career. It makes me, from a leadership standpoint, it makes it really difficult, because it's like, until you're honest with yourself on what you need from your life, from your career, and what you want that to look like, and I can help you draw that picture. I can help you make suggestions on what that can look like. But ultimately, I need honesty and transparency on being able to vocalize what that looks like and feels like. And if you can't vocalize and paint that picture yourself, there's no leader in the world that can just say the magical thing and all of a sudden it's going to click. It needs to click within you, and you need to have those difficult conversations with people and just say like, hey, you work hard, you're trying to make all the right decisions, but you clearly aren't happy. And you're staying in this motion or this rut that is ultimately not going to lead you anywhere. And you're going to stay frustrated. And I don't want that for you. So, we need to figure out a path that's going to work. And that can be someone who works for you that maybe does great work for you, but you can have an honest conversation with them being like, I can tell you don't want to be doing this. And quite frankly, if it's not something they're passionate about, I don't blame you. So to kind of create a relationship that can have progression, that can have more success, it takes figuring that out. It's like, you need to know what you want before I can help you or help get you there. So, and I felt like that. There's been moments in my life, in my career, where I felt stuck.
Sure, I have too.
Where I'm just like, maybe I'm successful, maybe I'm getting the accolades, but I'm feeling empty. I'm feeling like I'm not progressing. I'm not learning. I'm not being challenged enough. I'm not being uncomfortable enough to know that I'm bettering myself. And so that's probably the first conversation that I wish I could have with people, that they would be real, raw and honest with me about, because once you have that conversation, then you can get somewhere.
Well, I was going to ask you, because it sounds like you might be doing that now. Is there any space in your leadership where you are mentoring other folks?
Yeah, for sure. And I've had to have similar conversations, because I also don't want them to get turned off to the effect of, I don't want you here, or I rather have someone else that's more dedicated or feels more fulfilled from, said role. But at the same time, in the end, we need to do what's best for both of us. I want to be helpful and be someone you can lean on, But if you are going to be in a state of confused or you're unsure about your day to day, there's not a whole lot I can do. And I can tell it weans on the leadership when you have people that you want to help, you want to give them the advice, but it gets to a point where it's like, I need you to take some days off, sit, collect your thoughts, really just decide what are you going to put 100% of your effort in. And then that's the only way you're going to get the results that you need to be happy. Because I feel the challenge now when things become difficult, the economy becomes tighter, there's all these things that are thrown at us that make the day-to-day more difficult. You need to be able to block that out and still understand that you have your own goals and nothing's going to get in the way of that, but you have to believe them. If you don't believe your own BS, no one else is to some degree. And you can't sell it to someone else.
Yeah.
So
there's a great shift that I think is happening now. And I think, it might be connected to some of the things that are happening in, politics or just our society has shifted and our workforce has shifted.
Right.
We have seen now more than ever multi-generational workplace that's like kind of booming. And folks that used to be retiring around these age, they're still working. Right. And I think that comes with a bunch of different challenges in itself. What advice would you give to a new leader that's coming on to an environment such as a multi-generational workplace that would help them to be able to rest a little bit better at night?
Right. I think it's going to take more patience. So that's step one, because the different layers that come with trying to lead and manage the spectrum of generations, it's patience on both ends. I was going to say, if it's an older generation, it's patience so that they can maybe learn new technology and learn new processes that it does take a little bit longer for that generation to learn those things, but it takes patience. But it also takes patience on the other end for the young generation to understand that it's not enough to, give them an agenda or a checklist and somewhat path to success or career growth. It takes, they want to be valued. They want to feel that their contribution to whatever they're doing is heard, and you have to be patient with that. There's no getting around that. Between patience and then speak to people, you need to get out and talk to different generations. That's the way to really learn how people tick. So take the time to, even if it's small talk, or if you're on the subway or if you're walking down the street, you find someone that clearly there's an age gap between you and them. Ask them questions. Kind of dig into what makes them tick. People will tell you, and so you got to get out of your comfort zone and be able to have all those variant of conversations with them, and then from there you can kind of come up with a synopsis on, okay, yes, this is, an overview of how this generation maybe likes to communicate or what the expectation is for what to expect from behavior or social standpoint. But until you start having the conversations and understanding, what their age, how they were raised, and what their values are all different criteria you need to pay attention to. Because it's just not going to be enough to say, oh, they're millennial, they're Gen Z, they're boomer. So
and to just
XYZ.
Roll with those general characteristics.
Never going to be enough. And I've run into the younger generation who's raised maybe by their grandmother or grandfather or an aunt and just an older generation. Their values are going to stick closer to that generation. So you have to be aware of that. Sometimes asking those questions from people on maybe where they fall within their siblings, age-wise, it can tell you a lot on how they communicate, how they, what kind of insecurities essentially they might have from their childhood.
Receive communication, right.
Gotcha. And everyone holds on to that to some degree. I don't care how much therapy you have, to some degree, some of that, you're going to bring it with you. And I think from a leader standpoint, once you get that information, it makes you understand how they tick.
It's invaluable.
So if they're younger or older, all those little intricacies, and then who they're raised by, and kind of, not that you need to get super personal with them, but just the few questions are going to tell you a big picture on what their life has looked like and how they've maybe been treated and communicated with, and it'll make a better relationship with them.
You have unpacked a ton, and I hope that folks can rewind this and pause it and think about it and jot it down, like some of the things that you've done a great service to the next generation of leaders that are coming up. can you plug yourself? Where can folks find you if they need some mentorship or if they, I know you work at recruitment, so or
Yes,
whatever. So
absolutely.
just plug yourself, your socials, and where can folks find you?
So with boutique recruiting out of San Diego, so we do executive level recruiting for just about every industry. And you can find me on LinkedIn, the best place to find me. My personal information is on their email, and I'm always open to have a conversation with anyone, especially when it comes to management, leadership, career growth, whatever that looks like. I love being able to have those open conversations, and it's not that I have the answer per se, but we at least talk through it, and maybe we can find an answer. And for me, that's good enough, at least a starting point.
Yeah.
So,
any parting words that you would give to these new leaders that are joining this thing that we call leadership?
I'd say the number one aspect is awareness. Not only be aware of who you're leading when it comes to either where the generation they fall under or who they are as a person, being aware to their needs, being aware of the changes and the education that you need to constantly be providing yourself so you can be a good leader and have solution-based thinking for those individuals. And then be aware as well to when you need help, when you need mentors, when you need to continuously keep speaking to other successful people, because it's easy to see the accolades and they make it look easy, and but it's not. They will express their difficulties if you have candid conversations with them. So make sure you keep yourself uncomfortable so that it becomes comfortable, and be aware of the necessity of change and what comes with that, and patience as well. So.
Patience, accountability, all the great things that us leaders say we have, but we need to keep working on.
Work in progress.
Yeah. This has been an outstanding conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Again, this is the speaker series from Barriers to Breakthrough. Again, I'm the author of Barriers to Breakthrough, Dr. Don Wilkins, and this was another outstanding episode. Hopefully you guys can get a lot from this. Until next time, we'll see you.